Hi, I'm Anna Olsen here on A1R Radio with my segment Insights into Consciousness here on Tuesdays every week. And I'm at 1:30 Pacific Standard Time, 4:30 Eastern Standard Time. And I am happy to talk to you. You can always reach me on my website, annaolsenintuitive.com. And you can also reach me on Facebook at Anna Olsen Intuitive or Instagram at Tiny Medium Queendom. So today I am going to really delve into something that I think can help anybody with anything they're dealing with this pandemic, with this increase of unemployment, with all the things that everybody's dealing with at the moment. And I was trying to think of something that could just really benefit anyone in any situation. And the main thing that I've studied that I love for any situation or circumstance is attachments. Letting go of attachments. Have you ever heard somebody say, oh, well, I'm just not attached? You know, when you ask them what their opinion is on something or how they feel about something, that is one way to say they're not going to worry about it. But I really want to look at the deeper meaning of letting go of trying to control things that we are powerless to, which is what we really mean when we're talking about attachments. This in no way means that we don't care, or you don't want to deal with something. It is more or less looking at the aspect of your situation that you cannot control. Even though you would really want to control it, you can't. There's just no way to control it. Of course, do what you can to improve your situation and to come out ahead in your situation and to set goals and to reach them, of course. But the most productive way to meet goals and to get there is to let go of the things that you're attached to, that you're trying to control, that are impossible to control. The number one thing being other people. So even if we think that we're controlling somebody, it's actually a cyclical hamster wheel that we're running on that's never going to get anywhere. And I really want to look at that part of this today too. But first and foremost, when you're in isolation, you're dealing with this pandemic, there are a lot of stressors that we're not used to, right? I think it's important to stop and think about the present moment. You stop and you think about right now. You want to let go of the past because we can't control the past now. And we really are not doing any service to anybody ruminating on the past. You want to think about what's happening in this present moment, get in touch with your senses, your five senses, and even more if you have them, if you're aware of them. And then not worry about the future so much. Yes, we can plan for the future, but sitting and ruminating on what we think may or may not happen and worrying and worrying and worrying is not going to actually improve the future. It's going to distract us from the present where we can actually do something to prepare for the future. So it's about getting back into the present moment, okay? Letting go of those attachments that aren't serving us in the past and the future, okay? Past usually will cause us to suffer from depression when we think about things from the past that we can't change now. And the future usually causes anxiety, worrying and worrying about how this might turn out. So get back into this present moment, okay? And then what we do is we have three options about any circumstance. You look at the reality. Okay, we're dealing with reality. We're dealing with the consciousness that we can control. We're dealing with the, the dimension, the consciousness that we can do something about. And the first one any single time that we have a troubling circumstance, okay, we have three options in any circumstance at any given time. If you're wondering what you should do, you can do A, acceptance. So we can accept a situation, or B, we can change it. So you're going to actively do something in the moment to change whatever's bothering you right now, okay, or you leave it. You leave the situation. Those are the three present moment options. We literally have no other option for any circumstance. It really is that simple. And I think where a lot of this ruminating, worry, and thinking comes in and makes the mind very busy and a little crazy at times is thinking that we have some sort of control over something we absolutely do not have any control over. And this actually reminds me a little bit about politics and how some people talk a lot about it. I think it's great that people vent how they feel about things and they try to change it. Okay. But here we go again, where you have three options. If you're bothered by something political, you have three options. You accept it, you change it, or you leave it alone. Okay. So those are the three options that you have, that anybody has at any given moment. And I think that a lot of people are getting so stressed out about politics right now and really having a lot of conversations about it. And I think that that's leaving them feeling very powerless. So I think if they were to really stop and think, okay, which of these three things do I want to do? It would help them to feel more in power, more in control. Accept it, change it, or leave it. Okay. So the interesting thing is that when people are dealing with toxic people who, when we're talking about attachments, letting go of attachments, there are also attachments that we have to other people or that they have to us. So we could actually be attached to somebody and we are their parasite, or they could be attached to you, to me, and they are our parasite, okay? That could be energetic, financial, psychological, mental, emotional. This can really fall under many different circumstances with many different types of people, and it's across every race, every religion, and every economic background. This doesn't, pick and choose between who it wants to deal with. It's all across the board a general issue with toxic personalities. So, radical acceptance of another or a circumstance is one of the most difficult but best lessons in our lives. So when we have somebody doing something that we don't like, this can happen in a codependent relationship or when there's a toxic person really kind of causing other people to feel very codependent in a family or in a relationship. This can happen. So radical acceptance is a term coined. Basically, it's when you have an attachment to somebody being different, or they have an attachment to you parasitically. They're trying to take money. They're trying to take, your living situation. They're impeding on your personal boundaries in some way. Really letting go of the attachments that you can control something that you can't. You cannot make that person better. They have to do it on their own. Enabling them only makes it worse. This is radical acceptance, is saying it doesn't matter how bad somebody else's situation is, that you have to stop this desperate attempt at grabbing for and continually trying to make their lives better for them. It will never work. They will always have to do it for themselves. And radically accepting that, and radically accepting and not denying or sticking your head in the sand or pretending it's not existing or happening, doesn't work. It will just grow. It'll become a monster in everybody's lives, including the person who maybe is addicted or having a hard time. So when we talk about the toxic and codependency relationship that is involved in this dynamic, just as an example, I've done readings where people have suffered the aftermath of things like suicide, murder, or dealing with somebody who didn't care for their health. And when, they're left dealing with that for a very long time. And that's like the most extreme case of having to radically accept that this is reality. This is what happened. People start to go through this very unfortunate denial or this shock where they're going through life and they still haven't accepted it. Radical acceptance and understanding instead of denying that a person is the way they are and that they did what they did is number one in the first steps to like this whole process of unattachment. Total and complete radical acceptance, and then accepting ourselves. But we have to be careful not to let things constantly come back to the self. That is, I think, the basic concept, like underneath and underlying all of this radical acceptance, is understanding that it's not always about you. And it's not always about you feeling better. Sometimes people will chase after somebody who's treating them horribly to try to make themselves feel better, as if, oh, now that person accepts me, or, if I just do this better, it'll get better. If this addict, if I can just really be super loving and kind as a parent, this person will be okay. It's radically accepting that that person has made their choices, that they are who they are, that they are wired the way they are wired, that they are making the choices that they are making. And we have absolutely zero control over that. We can be supportive of that person with very good boundaries, and that's fine. We can always let that person know we love them. However, if your way of life and your quality of life or well-being is being compromised, diminished, or exterminated for the sickness of another person, there has to be some really significant changes that go on. And even at the extremes where you're afraid you may lose that person, it doesn't matter. And of course, we always have those exceptions where there are people like, let's say, developmental disabilities or physical disabilities where they absolutely need help. Yes. And there are other things that can come into play there, of course, especially if they still have an addiction or something like that, or they're a toxic personality. There are other ways we can get help with that. But, that aside, there is a common theme among people who need help with their relationships, like with the codependence and toxicity. There's almost always a give and take, or a toss and turn, or a pull with codependency and toxicity. So anytime a person is very toxic in the way that they're being, either right now or on a permanent basis, they're going to need to feed off of codependence. They're going to need to feed off of people who will enable that behavior or feel responsible for their behavior, or whom really get their identity trying to help others. So, it's really important too to know that these toxic people also need to practice these letting go of attachments, letting go of what other people do to help them or not, letting themselves be the only person they need to depend on, or to grow up and to mature some, and to be understanding of themselves, that there is some maturity that needs to be had here, that needs to be increased. So I think it's really important to look at what you can control. Why are you trying to control someone else? Because that is impossible. Okay, that's very immature to try to always control someone else. And it's okay if somebody thinks they can for a while, but after a while, there needs to be a reality check that is literally impossible to control someone else. In a healthy relationship, we're not talking about like, chaining somebody up in your basement. Okay, that's just going a little psycho. Okay, guys. So if you think about that analogy of tying somebody up in your basement, you can also do that emotionally to somebody. So that said, if you think of it that extreme, okay, let's practice radical acceptance here, that's not okay. That's not healthy. That's not normal. That's taking away somebody's freedom. That's being too overbearing, and it's too much. Okay. So know that that's how you may be coming across if you are starting to try to control somebody emotionally, or where they go, or who they're with, that sort of a thing. You can always ask them to agree, of course, and their actions would actually be your answer. So this is another thing that I really love to teach people about, because people can say a myriad of things. People can tell you all you need to hear and want to hear till the cows come home. It could be 8 hours of I love yous, and of course I will never let you down, and I absolutely understand what you're saying, and I'll never do that again. I'll never do anything to hurt you again. Okay, there's a certain amount of this that is absolutely something to be taken seriously, and definitely always give somebody another chance. But if you notice their behavior does not align with their words, and you notice that they'll say they're doing better, they're not going to do it again, but they continue doing it. We have to understand that words are very fluid. They are easily forgotten. They are easily said. When they talk about lip service, right? That's just somebody's BSing you if they don't align their behaviors with their words. And you will catch them, okay? So it's about letting somebody know what it is that you need, putting boundaries down, letting them know what you will or will not tolerate or will not do to keep your environment and your mind safe. And if they behave in a way that does not, really align with what you said, then you need to go to the next tier and you need to take some action. So when we're letting go of attachments, we're letting go of what that person does, and we're just drawing the attention back to what we're doing in a way of, okay, I told this person that I will not tolerate this behavior again. It is very harmful to me or my family or my children or whatever, my dog, whatever. And it's my job, your job, our job to really enforce what we say. So when we set a boundary, we let them know and they continue, then that is our cue that we have to go straight to not being attached to their behavior, only doing what we're supposed to do in response. Accept it, change it, leave it. Okay, so those are the three options at any given time. And it's important to stay in the present. So if we're basing all of our behaviors or choices on worrying about what happened in the past, or we're just worried about what's going to happen in the future, yeah, we can plan for the future. But as long as you're on the right track that is aligning with proper boundaries and unattached behavior, and just allowing other people to show you exactly who they are as you really just prepare for your own life, I think that that's really the key here, because we're figuring out insanity here and how to make life simple. So I think a lot of insanity is people thinking they can control things they actually cannot, denying things that are realities, and thinking there's more steps to, accepting, changing, or leaving a situation. Now, in addition, what I've noticed is that there are too many people out there when they have a troublesome circumstance, they're accepting the troublesome circumstance and then they're trying to change it. And while they're trying to change it, they're trying to change the other person. Then they go back to trying to accept it. And then they're going back to trying to change the person. They're completely leaving out the leave it component, where you're leaving the situation, you're leaving that area, even physically. You can leave it mentally, yes, for so long. But if you're bouncing back and forth between trying to accept something and trying to change it or another person, it's time to back up and stop and think about what the definition of insanity is. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result when you've never had a different result in the past. Okay, it doesn't work. Try something else. Do something else. And if you're constantly being bounced back and forth between accepting and changing somebody, you're actually in a state of denial, because if somebody is really understanding the dynamic, they're not going to be stuck in this back and forth bouncing, thing where they're doing a hamster wheel of the same thing that isn't working for years or even weeks, months. That's too long to waste on something that is never going to change, that is just causing an immense amount of suffering. And the other dynamic of letting go of attachments and really understanding what we can and can't control, which is really just ourselves. The other dynamic of it is that when we're thinking about something that's bothering us, let's say that you can't come to any closure on the topic for at least a month. Okay, some people are waiting on the return of like a judgment in court, or some people are waiting for sentencing, or people may be waiting for a meeting or what have you. In the interim, being attached to that and worrying about it is not going to make it better. The only thing that will make it better is preparing for it in a way that's conducive to really setting yourself up to win. Worrying about it when you're trying to spend time with your family or your friends or doing things to take care of yourself is going to really backfire. So if you're waiting and you're suffering, like even with the pandemic, focusing on the present moment and what we can and can't change, and then radical acceptance and letting go of attachments to things that we can't control, that you can't control, that's going to put you on a whole new level of sanity and less anxiety, and realizing I can't control that person or this thing anyway. I am going to have to accept it, and then I am going to need to figure out what my next step is. Because that denial, I think, is what really leaves people in the cyclical nature of a relationship that is toxic, where they are constantly trying to fix something that they cannot fix. And half of that at times, I think, is them being in denial about the real problem. For instance, somebody who is, let's say, married to an alcoholic. I'm just going to throw that out there. I'm not thinking of anybody in specific, and I just kind of pulling something out of the air. Somebody's married to an alcoholic. They're constantly trying to tell them to drink less, or they're constantly trying to buy less alcohol, or they're trying to constantly avoid places where they sell alcohol, okay? That is bouncing back and forth and trying to control the person, okay? That is not going to get anybody anywhere. And at the same time, that's also a form of denying that the person may be an alcoholic or is an alcoholic. They want to just toss it off to, well, if we just avoided this restaurant more where they like to drink, then they would be fine. Or, really, really radically accept what's happening. Understand the dynamic, and then bring in the big guns. What do you need to do next to really make a change in this? What really needs to happen? Because I'll tell you what, the more that we enable somebody, the more we are also impeding their growth and development. And that is the hard part of this. If we're enabling somebody, it's hard to let go, and it's hard to set limits, and it's hard to put boundaries on them because we love them. We don't want, you don't want to see your loved ones suffer. You don't want to see them suffer in a way that causes them huge discomforts and problems, but that is their cycle, their behavior, and their issue to deal with. So honestly, what we're doing, if we try to cushion that for them, is we are not just enabling the behavior longer, but we are taking that learning experience from them. We are robbing them of that lesson. We are robbing them of the good that can come in their lives from defeating these issues they have and from building true confidence in themselves. We are robbing them of their independence in a way of now they've solved the problem and now they can move on to bigger and better things. We've robbed them of some freedom, independence. There's so many things we're robbing them of, spiritual learning and growth. If we're taking on somebody else's problem, we're taking on all of their struggles, we are robbing them of more than just suffering. We're robbing them of the growth, development, and self-love that could come from getting over a hurdle, crossing over something that has been a struggle for them. So it is such an injustice spiritually to continue on in these codependent, toxic relationship dynamics. And, at the same time, many people in these dynamics have children, and the children are being dragged through the mud. They're in the process of these things. Their children are suffering more than they're admitting in these situations, where here we have the denial again. Really understanding the dynamic, allowing, children to be protected, spouses to be protected, families to be protected, people on the road, even driving, to be protected. I think it's more about doing the hard thing initially, investing some time and effort into what's harder, for an investment in the long run and really making life easier for everybody involved down the road. And I think that's what's really hard for a lot of people who have become comfortable in situations where they're in a marriage or a dynamic in a family, and really looking at the history of your family. Did a lot of people have an issue with this topic? Did a lot of people struggle with this very thing? Is it anger? Is it addiction? Is it affairs? Is it, what is it that has been passed down through the generations, or the family dynamic environmentally, neurologically, where we're wired brain-wise to be a certain way, we have a certain personality. And then on top of it, what does the environment say about how a person grew up? How was their interaction with their parents? How far back does that go? How can we reframe and realign and reprogram this for our children and our children's children? It's this ongoing curse that can happen as a pattern in families, and it's really important to look at these dynamics. So attachments are something that we are holding on to. These are the attachments. We're not talking about not caring about something. We want to prepare. I want to reiterate, this is about caring enough to do the hard things that really make a difference. It's about being a hero to our circumstances rather than a victim. And it's about allowing other people around us to be heroes to their circumstances rather than a victim, and rather to be, rather than allowing people to be a big baby and to really, man up, woman up, and be an adult in the situation. So if you have any other questions, you can always contact me on my website. It's AnnaOlsenIntuitive.com. And I'm also on Facebook at Anna Olsen Intuitive. I also do readings, and I'd love to speak with you. You can contact me anytime. Let me know how I can help you or how we can work together. And I'm also on Instagram at Tiny Medium Queendom. So I just really hope you have a great week, and I've had a lot of fun talking about this today. I'd love to work with you too. I do one-on-one sessions weekly, bi-weekly. If you'd like to try that too, just give me a ring, give me a text or a message, and I will hopefully see you soon. Thank you.